Welcome, everyone, joining us today. My name is Albert Anamfiu Checho. I'm the Masterclass Coordinator with the Anijie Global Foundation. For those new to us, Anijie Global Foundation is a youth-led nonprofit organization empowering women and youth through educational and leadership development programs. Our mission is to drive positive community impact and contribute to global progress. Today's masterclass session is part of our Anijie Masterclass series, a monthly online learning initiative bringing together global change makers, industry leaders, and emerging talents to shape the next generation of African leadership. Through these interactive sessions, we bridge the gap between aspiration and achievement, theory and practice, challenges and solutions. Once again, my name is Albert Anamfiu Checho. I'm the Masterclass Coordinator, and I'm glad to have you here with us for today's Masterclass session on the SDGs, from activism to implementation. I believe you would really enjoy this Masterclass. Yes, so let's kindly get our notepads ready. If we use our phones to take notes as well, let's get to our notes on our phone. So without wasting much time, I'd like to introduce today's speaker. Like I mentioned, today's masterclass, as a September 2025 masterclass, we are tackling the SDG generation from activism to implementation, building your path to global impact. And we have a speaker who embodies just that. And our speaker is a development policy professional passionate about transforming global commitments into local impact. She has experience in governance, innovative finance, and social sustainability. She has designed programs empowering women, youth, and persons with disabilities. She has also built digital platforms amplifying community voices and contributed to global research on climate change, vaccine equity, and the SDGs. For those new to the SDGs stand for the Sustainable Development Goals, the UN. And she's also a founder of the Global Development Talks with Grace, a thought leadership platform simplifying complex policy debates for young people. And she inspires the next generation to not only be future leaders, but also present, implement, but also present implementers of the SDGs. Ladies and gentlemen, without wasting much time, I'd like to call on our speaker for today, Ms. Grace Vanderpuye. Ms. Grace Vanderpuye, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Checho, and good evening to everyone. And I would want to thank the management of Anijie Global Foundation for having me in today's masterclass. And my name is Grace Vanderpuye. Thank you for the great introduction. And today I can see that although we are not many, I would want us to have a conversation. I'll be engaging us, so much. I'll be asking some questions along the way after each slide. So I'm going to get right into it. Checho, can you kindly share the slides? Thank you. Yes. Can you go? Yes, the first slide, yes. So I think I'm going to skip the part of, my introduction since you've already done a very great introduction. So yes, so let's leave it here. But before I get to, this slide, I want, us to write, just drop in the chat box one word that describes how we feel about the SDGs. I believe that all of us on this platform, all 6 of us or 8 of us currently, I believe, are conversant with the Sustainable Development Goals. I want us to drop in the chat box how we currently feel about the SDGs. We know that the SDGs is up to 2030. How do you feel about it? Are you anxious? Are you frustrated? How are you happy? Are you excited? Just, drop in the chat box. How do you feel about the SDGs? I'll be waiting for you. So unless you type something, we are not moving on. This is a masterclass, not just a webinar. This is a masterclass. I want us to have, a great interaction this evening. So type in the chat box. I'll be waiting to see the answers. How do you feel about the Sustainable Development Goals? Right? Just one word, how you feel about it. Oh, Checho, the chat is disabled. Can you kindly open it up? While we wait for that to come on, we apologize for that as well, yeah.
This is enabled now. Thank you.
Okay, so can we kindly put it in the chat box? Yes. How we feel about the SDGs. I'm going to start optimistic. I feel very optimistic about it. Are there people here? Are there people here? Because I can't see anything. How do you feel about the SDGs? Okay, someone is still saying that their chat is still disabled.
It has been enabled now. Thank you.
Okay. Josephine, is it working for you? Okay, we would not, okay. Someone says impactful, okay. Okay, Josephine, I would want to hear how you feel about the SDGs. Anything? Okay, Joyce says she's excited and hopeful that we can achieve them. That's good, Joyce. And there are no right or wrong answers over here. So just feel free to, say anything in the chat box. So we have optimistic, impactful, and being excited and hopeful that, okay. So Josephine says she feels somewhat, it seems not fulfilled because the rural population seems unaware yet. Okay. Modeling says she's hopeful. And Edwina also says, she's also optimistic about the SDGs. All right. Someone also says they feel tensed. Okay, that's also good. that you feel tense because 2030, we look at the fact that we're in 2025 and we just have 5 years to go. It's also okay to feel tense. Thank you so much for your responses. Okay, so far, these are the responses I have. So let me go right into it. So thank you so much for, engaging with me. And I'd want to start with when we say what the SDG generation means, what really comes into our mind. So when I say that the SDG generation, it actually means that we are the generation. So the SDGs were actually brought into light in 2015. So the SDG generation actually means that we are the generation with the tools and the data and connectivity to solve global challenges at scale. And on the other hand, we are also the generation that is facing the sharp edge of climate change, inequality, unemployment, gender inequality, and every other thing that comes into it. So, we are at the crossroads. So being the SDG generation means that we carry both the responsibility and opportunity to shape the future. And too often, we as young people are seen, especially in Africa, we are seen as beneficiaries of, programs that are implemented by governments. But across the world, each and every passing day, we see that young people are building startups, leading protests, designing apps, all these, the fintech apps that we see are being built by young people and also influencing policies. So rather than us seeing ourselves as beneficiaries, we need to prove that we are actually co-creators. And so we are also not just future leaders, but we are present implementers of global change, sorry. So I'm going to do a quick poll again in the chats. And quickly let me know how whether you see yourself more of an activist or an implementer or both. Quickly, let me know whether you see yourself as an activist, implementer, or a bit of both activist and implementer, or an activist or an implementer. Both. Josephine says both. Okay, Josephine. Both. Martin also says both. Okay, Churchill also says both. Okay. Joyce also says both. Okay, that's good. That's actually very good because both. Thank you so much. Actually asked this question because SDG generation actually thrives in the space of both activism and implementation. You cannot do one and leave another. So you'd have to be both an activist and an implementer. So we move to our next slide, which is on from awareness to action. Most of us are aware, but we actually need to move from awareness or activism to action. And activism is powerful. We can think about, global climate, strikes, protests that have gone on around the world, even in Ghana, Galamsey, protests. I think in 2020, we also had a Nigeria NSAS movements, which even we as Ghanaians, we were tweeting, we were talking about, and these movements actually mobilized millions and millions of people and actually sparked critical conversation. But what we need to know as young people is that activity is not enough. Yes, we can be visible, but visibility without sustainability, which is, making sure that this thing goes on and on and goes, beyond us, even if we are not alive. Visibility without sustainability often, leads to burnout or, short-term lived win, sorry. So real transformation begins when our demands actually turn into programs, policies, and change in our communities that can be measurable. For example, climate protests can raise awareness, but it actually makes meaning when youth innovators actually create, renewable energy hubs or actually influence policies and finance where, we can actually move to green taxonomies. That is where the implementation is at. But normally the challenge that comes before us as young people, when I say young people, including me, has to do with bridging the gap between our voices, raising our voices, and, building systems that work wherever we find ourselves. So I'm going to show the next slide. Okay. Chacho, can you please help me with the next slide, the picture of the protest? I'm just trying here, but yes. So, what do we think about this picture? What do we think about it? I'd want to know in the chat box, what do we think should have come after this EndSARS? So this is a picture of the EndSARS, movements in Nigeria. So what do we think should have come after this EndSARS? Like after it happened, what were we expecting to see? What should have happened? Kindly put in the chat box quickly. Okay, their voices be heard. Okay, Checho says he was expecting that their voices will be heard. Okay. Policy change. Okay, that's good. Okay, change and results. The anonymous attendee says change and results. Okay. Any other? Okay, so I'll go right into it. So after the EndSARS protests, personally, maybe someone can correct me, but I don't know really what happened after the EndSARS protests. We really didn't see the change that the young people, wanted come alive. So after the EndSARS protest, the next step should have been embedding youth voices into formal reform processes. That is, the young people should have been carried along in drafting, new laws, creating oversight bodies, and building tools where social media could come into place, building digital platforms for accountability. That's how, we can actually move from a cry of justice to into a system of justice. So that is how we could have moved, from the activism to the implementation. So after the EndSARS movement, that is what I believe should have been done. That is embedding the young people into drafting new laws and making sure that they were there in every step of the way. So the next slide has to do with our personal alignment with the SDGs. I just want to be sure if everybody here knows what the SDGs are. If you don't know, kindly, put in the chat box, which projects the SDGs for us all to learn. This is a learning space. So I just, want to give us about a minute in case anyone here does not know what the SDGs are. Kindly do let us know. Okay, sustainable development, yes. So the SDGs are the Sustainable Development Goals. They came into being in 2015. There are 17 development goals, which were made up to 2030. They actually have targets that have been set. About 65% of the targets are supposed to be realized at the local level, that is in working with districts, assemblies, and local governments. When we talk about the SDGs, I'm happy that, this session actually came in September. Currently, we have the UNGA, the United Nations, General Assembly. We see world leaders talking about, going on stage, talking about, SDGs, world issues and all that. But that is not just what the SDG means. The SDG is about you and me. So over here, we are going to talk about personal alignment with the SDGs. So if, we want a personal alignment with the SDGs, that is aligning the SDGs with your personal and professional journey, we need to ask ourselves 3 questions. So the first one has to do with which SDG speaks most to my passion. Sometimes you are watching the television and you can see a woman being battered by her husband, and it actually does something to you. I mean, like you actually feel sad for her. You see a child walking on the streets, a child that is supposed to be in school, hawking on the streets and all that. And you know that this child actually deserves to be in class. That is the SDG on quality education. The one where you see a woman being battered by a husband or being treated in a way where you think it shouldn't be, that is on gender equality. So out of the 17 SDGs, you need to know the SDGs. In aligning the SDGs to your personal and professional goals, you need to know which SDG actually speaks most to your passion. There are 17. And I don't think that all 17 goals should align to your passion. I don't know how, then you must be a multifaceted individual. But you can actually choose some SDGs. For some people, they would have quite a number of them that, relate to their passion. But for someone, it can just be one, and it's okay. So in aligning it, you can actually, look at which SDG speaks to your passion. And then the second question has to do with mapping out your skills. What do you bring to the table? Most of the times, I know because of LinkedIn and other social media platforms has actually made it difficult for us to doubt ourselves. But today I'm here to tell you not to doubt yourself, because we actually have skills, hard skills, we have soft skills. Whatever skills you have actually can be brought to the table and help, in aligning the goals to your personal or professional goals. You can be someone who knows how to talk. You are a professional yapper or unprofessional yapper, that's fine. But, that is actually a skill that you could bring to the SDG. Someone has arbitration skills. You could actually, settle a fight or something amongst people. That is actually great. There's an SDG on peace, justice, and institutions. You can actually work in that area. There are so many skills that we have as young people. For some people, you know how to write. Some people, you can tell stories, convincing stories. That is actually a skill. For some people, you can actually analyze data. That is also a skill. And so, so we need to bring our skills to the table in terms of aligning our personal goals with the SDGs. And the next one has to do with what measurable contribution can I make? So you need to define your contribution. Yes, you've seen a child on the street. So your contribution will be, what did you do when the child got to school? When the child got to school at first, maybe the child couldn't say A, B, C, but now when you were able to get the child into school, now the child can actually say A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3. That's actually a measurable contribution. So I'm going to give you just about a minute to, write down the SDG that's, you think actually matches up with your passion. And one skill, just one skill. It shouldn't be a hard skill. It shouldn't be data analytics. If you have data analytics skills, fine. But just a simple skill that you believe would map, this SDG. I think I'll tell Churchill to actually share a picture of the SDG so we all have an idea about it. Thank you. So I'll give you a minute and a half, so 90 seconds. Thank you. So can someone tell us, your chosen SDG and one skill that you can contribute to it? It can be any skill. Let's make it fast, please. Okay, Maudlin says gender equality, and her SDG is on gender equality, and her skill is policy development. Thank you so much, Maudlin. Okay. Okay, Churchill says SDG 13, which is on climate action. And the skill he has is advocacy, raising awareness, and mobilizing people for sustainable climate solutions. That is very good. That is very good. I would wait for one more person to put in their SDG and the skill that they bring to the table. Oh, Josephine says hers is almost okay. Josephine, that's fine. Oh wow, I love it. So almost all the SDGs. Okay, but can you tell us just one skill at least that you believe can help all the SDGs? Okay, SDG 3. All right. Good health and well-being, I believe. Josephine, for SDG 3, we are looking at good health and well-being. So what skill do you bring to good health and well-being? Okay, Edwina says that her skill set is in conflict resolution and her aligned SDG goal is SDG 17. That is promoting peace, justice, and strong institutions. Thank you so much, Edwina, and for all the attendees over here. I think that our anonymous attendee has written something. Yes. So collaboration. So his or her skill is on collaboration, and their SDG is on education and zero hunger. And then I believe that the skill that they bring on board is self-awareness. Thank you all so much. This has been very insightful. Okay, I think I see one last chat, if I'm not mistaken. 16. Chacho also says 16. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we move to the pathways of implementation. Oh, so Chacho says, please, I actually am yet to build that skill. Okay, it's also good to know that you do not have the skill yet. So when you're able to map out your skill and you know that I need this skill for this SDG, but I do not have the skill yet, it's okay. This is why we are all here to learn. Or after this, we can even learn from others. There are lots of, learning platforms where we can learn these skills from. So it's also okay. What is needed now is identifying the skill that you need, both the skill you have and the skill that you need to implement the SDG that you are passionate about. Thank you so much. So in our next slide, we have the pathways to implementation. So I'm going to talk about, 4 major ways and pathways to scale up our impact as young people. And the first one has to do with, policy engagement. That is young people influencing budgets, laws, and strategies. I would want to use example in Ghana. I remember when, the very first budget of the new government was about to be read. I remember the finance minister was actually in markets asking people what their opinions were on the budgets. And for me, I think that this was an opportune moment for young people to actually, raise their voices, go on Twitter spaces, go on TikTok to talk about these things, engage policymakers. You may not be able to meet them in person, but I believe that this was an opportune moment for us to, talk about how we could actually influence the budgets. We have, our parliaments, but we can actually go on social media, use our social media tools to actually talk about how we need to, engage them, how we want to influence our laws. If you see a law and you are not okay with it, that is the right avenue to, have a pathway in the SDG implementation. The next one has to do with innovative financing. So the development landscape is actually changing from traditional donor financing to innovative financing. In the traditional donor landscape, we actually had donors, or traditional donors actually just, give us money, you spend on your projects and you just report. But now, because of how complex the system is and the new priority areas for these development partners, we actually have to, show them value and actually show collaboration. Because if you are going to work, for instance, especially with the private sector, we have to show them the return on investments. the private sector will not just give you money to spend on your project. So we have to work in such a way that, yes, I am passionate about this SDG, but how do I prove to the private person that they are going to get a return on investment on whatever funding that they are given? We actually can also look at, crowdfunding, blended finance, diaspora bonds, and climate finance or climate funds. These are all ways of having innovative financing means to, have a pathway to implementation of the SDGs. We also have partnerships and platforms, collaboration amplifies reach. If you're a young person that is working on something, I don't think that you should just sit in your little corner and just tell yourself that, oh, I can do all this by myself. No, this is the time for us to collaborate more. There are platforms like the Youth Connect Africa, Global, Shapers, even Anijie Foundation, and some other ones like Ashoka, where we can actually, take our local ideas global. We can actually partner with foundations like this to, scale our impact. Last but not the least is data and storytelling. Someone told me recently that if you are not visible, you will not get paid. And I believe this is true. So it's actually important that we need to, come up with evidence in terms of how we were able to move our projects from point A to point B, and then actually, convince policymakers that, look, even with the little that I did, this is what I was able to do. So you need to support me in this area. And also in terms of storytelling, it's good that as young people, we tell our stories because, the global development scene is changing. So we need to tell our stories in a way that would amplify the work that we do. And stories actually inspire people. We need real life stories. So combining data and storytelling would actually do the work for us. So I'm going to give us a take-home assignment for, the Anijie Global, cohort members. And you'd have to, in small groups, have, a youth project idea and map out how it would actually be taken from protest or activism to policy or scale. I believe you could actually share it with your leaders and then we'll have a discussion on that later. Okay. So our next slide has to do with building your path to global impact. It's similar to the previous one. So one, what SDG challenge drives me the most? What unique skills do I have or unique resources, do I bring on board? And how will I measure or scale my impact? And the pathway can be through, NGOs, startups, incubators, or global institutions. These are all valid. Campaigns are actually, sparks, but we need to work within institutions. And, working with NGOs and startups or incubators actually, help, scale up our ideas for it to be global. Because for instance, during the UNGA, you cannot just go, as an individual, you need to go under a CSO or an NGO. And I believe that the African Union, recently I was reading that the African Union was actually calling or, African CSOs that were doing something great to actually be at the UNG. They were actually going to give them accreditation and all that. So this is why we need to, come under these umbrellas to do what, we are supposed to do. So the key takeaways for this session has to do with the fact that, we are leaders of today, not just, leaders of tomorrow. We are also implementers of today. And activism sparks change, but implementation sustains it. It's good for us to start local, but we always need to think about scaling it and also thinking global. Whatever you are doing in your corner is great, but you have to move beyond being a local, activists to taking it out there on a global stage. And last but not the least, partnerships and accountability, sustains impact. And these are, practical ways where we can, begin working as implementers. And for our call to action, which is our final slide, I can see that my time is going fast. And I would want to, tell us that we are the SDG generation and implementation is where change becomes real. It's okay to start small, but we need to scale big and partner widely. And my last question would have to do with what step will you take tomorrow to turn your activism into implementation? you can share it in the chat box, and that would be it. Thank you so much, Anijie Foundation, for having me, and thank you. Over, Churchill.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I believe our audience learned a lot from today's session. I myself, my notes are full today. Yes, and I mean, there are a lot of things I didn't know prior to this concerning the SDGs, and this masterclass has cleared the few misconceptions I had about this, and it has given me what it takes to move from just being in the activism phase, but to implement these things we try and build activism for. And I'd like to let our audience know that we have the Q&A session coming up. So if you have any question you'd like to ask our speaker, maybe she said something you want clarity on, you can put it in the chat box. If you have any question in general about the SDGs, about the topic we've just discussed, do all to make use of the chat box, and or you can equally put it in the Q&A feature. Okay, so Josephine says, very insightful. Thank you for sharing your experience and knowledge. Yes. Please, you are advised to, you are reminded to put your question and answers in the Q&A feature. I'll read them to the speaker, and she would answer them for us. Okay, there's a question from an anonymous attendee that goes, how can one go to the UNGA to have his or her voice heard?
Okay, let me turn on my video. Yes. So thank you so much to our anonymous attendee for this question. Yes, we all want our voices to, be heard at, global spaces like the UNGA. But ask yourself this, how would you let your voice be heard at such a big stage when you haven't started at the local level? So this is where my start small and, grow big comes in. You can get on TikTok. You can actually get on Facebook. You can join, an NGO. You can join a local CSO. There, you can actually start, talking about issues that you have passion, that you are passionate about, sorry. And over there, you just begin to talk to people. You can actually go on the streets and talk to people, get their opinions, This way, you would actually get the opportunity. The opportunity would actually come to you. And in some few years to come, you'd actually get to the UNGA. But if you do not start small, nobody knows what you are capable of. You are not visible. So yeah, so I would just entreat you to start small wherever you are. Let us use social media. And when I say tell your stories, you can do it in writing. Some people do not like to talk that much, but at the UNGA, you are going to talk. So you can just start with writing something, start with a poem, a blog, you know, an article or anything. And then from there, you actually start voicing out your opinions. And then from there, you actually join a CSO. There are lots of, you know, organizations that are sponsoring people to, you know, go to these, you know, programs. Not just the UNGA is not the only, you know, global platform. Normally, before the UNGA, there's a high-level political forum, and there are also other, you know, engaging forums at the UN secretariat where you can go to. But my advice to you would be start small. And Churchill says, please, how can we reach out to institutions for implementation? I'd want to get a context. When you talk about institutions for implementations, are you talking about, you know, getting funding? I want to understand the context, but if I can answer right away, you can actually, you know, there are lots of websites. I would actually have to send some of them to, you know, your lead at Anijie to, you know, help. But we actually have institutions that actually give monies, or I wouldn't say they give us the monies, but they want to collaborate with local NGOs to implement projects. There are a variety of them. So you'd have to do the work of going online to search for these institutions or organizations that are in the area of SDG that you are passionate about. So you get there and actually, you know, search. For some of them too, you'd have to take a bold step and bring your value to them. You'd have to bring your value to them in terms of telling them what you have done and what you are willing to do for them. So yeah, in that vein, that is how you actually reach out to these institutions. First and foremost, going to, you know, their webpage or their website, and then also reaching out to them with your value and letting them know that this is what you can bring on board to collaborate with them. And then I believe that, or for the private sector as well, you can actually show them that this is the return on investment that you're going to get if you're able to work with me. So there are a variety of ways. So thank you. I think that there's also another question. What mindset shift is necessary for the youth to become implementers rather than just activists? So I believe that one mindset shift that we actually need is thinking global. Sometimes as young people, we tend to think small, especially from, you know, where we're born or the environment in which we find ourselves. Think global. And then when you think that way, the world is your oyster. You'd be able to know that whatever I do at the local scale, you know, can be scaled up globally. And the next question is, what has been the most rewarding project you've worked on related to the SDGs? Okay, so personally, for the work I do, I work with an international non-governmental organization. And for one of the projects, it was a very massive project where for some people, we gave them, you know, seed funding to implement some projects. For some cooperatives, we also help them with, you know, capacity building. For some CSOs, we actually help them with training on resource mobilization, capacity building, and in terms of their governance structure and all that. But one time we went on the field to actually monitor these projects, and one man came to us and it was being translated to us, but what he said was that after he was, you know, given that seed funding, he was able to start a farm and actually go into farming. And for me, what I picked up from was that this man was somebody who used to batter his wife. He would go drink and then batter his wife afterwards. But ever since we had that program, and then, you know, he started the you know, projects as, you know, it was ongoing. And he actually went through some counseling and all that. He has actually stopped doing that. So he has been actually stable and all that. And for me, that is actually a real impact of a project that we have worked on. Yes. So the next question is, what mistakes do you see young people making and how can they avoid them? Okay, so one mistake that I believe that young people can make or be just, rushing into activism. Yes, activism is good, but we need to have plans always as young people. So we should just not rush, when we see a problem. Yes, it's important. In some places, it actually gets the change. But when you know the kind of environment that you come into, we need to take our time and have a plan before moving. Because if not, we are just going to have activism. We are just going to have protests without having any real meaningful change. So I believe that we can avoid that by, taking our time to, sit around with people, like-minded people, and actually plan very well. When we go with a plan, trust me, we would actually move from that whole, activism, protests, and all that without having where we normally do not have an end goal to actually a point where we actually go in, we are activists, and then move to being implementers as well. Anonymous attendee is really making us busy here. What if no one wants to listen or even like or read publications? I would say just that. You may never know. People are always watching. They may not like it, but people are always watching and reading. I'd want to encourage you, whoever you are, just start it, just start writing. And when you write, just share with someone that you trust to just, proofread for you before you post it there. Just be consistent. Consistency is key. Don't ever think that no one is going to read it, so you're not going to do it. If you do not have a LinkedIn account, create one. If you have, an organization you're working with, create one as well. Be consistent, just write, share with whoever you trust, someone that you think may be also good in that space, and then share with them to, proofread and then post it. Trust me, people are always watching, and create a niche for yourself in that area. And at the right time, people would listen to you or, want to, engage with you on global spaces. What are some key indicators young leaders should track in their projects? I believe that this question has to do with what the goal of your project is. What the goal of your project is. I mean, in every project, when you are, designing your project, you actually have a theory of change that you actually have to, you actually have a theory of change in designing a project. So you'd have to do your outputs, your outcomes, and your results. So it's very important when you are, designing a project, you'd have to look at the outputs, your outcomes, and your results. So outputs in terms of, for instance, when you are designing a project, like what are you going to produce? And then produce in terms of from the projects, let's say number of trainings or funds mobilized. And then for your outcomes will be what's really changed for the people in terms of maybe how many jobs were created, how many children, were educated, and what was the, change in that? Yes, children were educated, but what were they educated on, and how does this reflect in their personal lives? And then for the results is the human-centered evidence. Yes, people went to school, but did it have an impact on their families? Did it have an impact on their communities? Is it going to have an impact on their nation, as a whole? I hope this answered your question. And then the last one, I saw on your LinkedIn that you work with UNDP. How did you start on that platform to be working on the SDGs? Thank you so much. So yes, I work with UNDP, but I would want to put it out there that I am not representing UNDP during this talk. That is why I didn't even put it in my profile. But yes, I work with the UNDP in Kigali. And how I started before joining the UNDP, when I was in the university, I had already started, having some internships in some places, which, gave me understanding because I wanted to be in that field. So I started having some internships. And then for most of these organizations, I believe that it's important for you to have an advanced degree. So a master's degree is very important. So you'd have to have a master's degree, and then you can start with an internship, which I started with. And then afterwards, I became an African Young Woman Leaders Fellow. a fellowship for young African women in Africa to give them the platform to be part of an international organization like the UNDP. And then from there, after the fellowship ended, I was retained in UNDP to work there. So I believe this is just a brief, summary of how I got to the UNDP. But I would say start small, start with an internship anywhere you are, start with an internship with the CSO, start with an internship with, on a local project, start anywhere you are. And I believe these are all the questions. And thank you so much for your questions. Over to you, Churchill.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I believe you did justice to the questions that were posed to you. Thank you very much. I have really learned a lot from today's session, and I would like to highlight a few of my takeaways, especially for those who may have joined late. Once again, our topic is on the SDG generation, and we are moving from activism to implementation. And as Speaker made mention, that it's not enough to know the SDGs. The real challenge is moving from activism to actual implementation. Activism, the talking, the advocating. Let's move to implementation. Let's move to doing. Let's move to creating measurable impact. And she made mention of the fact that everyone has a unique role to play. So you need to identify the SDG that aligns with your skills and your passions and the community needs, and you would make an impact. And also, she gave us some pathways to implementation that we should leverage on the governance, we should leverage on the community engagement and all that. Yes, these are just a few of my takeaways from today's session. If you missed most part of the session, shouldn't be worried. The session will be posted on our YouTube channel in Anijie Global Foundation for everyone to have the access to it. Now, thank you once again, Grace Vanderpuye. We are very, very grateful for having you here, for sharing your valuable insights, and thanks to everyone who joined today's masterclass. Our next masterclass will be coming off in October. Basically, the last Wednesday of every month, we have our Anijie Masterclass session. So we entreat you all to kindly put it in your schedules so that come the last Wednesday of October, we'll see you here once again to learn from the next speaker. And to stay updated on our upcoming events, please make sure you subscribe to the Anijie Global Foundation YouTube channel. And you can also follow us on all social media platforms at Anijie Global Foundation so that you follow the amazing work the foundation is going. Thank you very much. And one more thing, a feedback form will be sent via email for all of us to fill. Kindly fill the feedback forms. Feedback forms help us improve. So let us know what you think of the session, what you think could have been done better, and we pick it up from there. Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, I don't know if you have some final words just before we log off.
I just want to thank Anijie Global Foundation for having me here. It's been such a great session, and I've also learned a lot from the participants here. I see a very last question and I would want to address it quickly if you don't mind. And please, as an upcoming medical student with keen interest in activism and implementation, what are the perfect routes you can suggest, since we may not be having the chance to gain those internships you said? It really depends on where you want to find yourself or which area of the implementation you want to, be a part of. I'm not sure if this person who asked the question wants to, work with the UN or an international organization. But what I'll say is that there's no need to actually, start all over again. I believe that there are also medical students who are in the field that you want to be in. So it's also okay to write to people. When I was doing my master's degree, for instance, there were times where I would write to people and I would think they will not respond. They actually responded. I would, look for their email some way, somehow. Where there's a will, there's a way. I'd actually look for the emails of these people and tell them my interest in these areas to actually mentor or, help me in whatever that I wanted to do. So yes, you may not necessarily want to work in the UN, or even if you want to work with the UN, there may be someone who has also had a medical background and wants to, or has a medical background, sorry, and has also, gone the path where you also want to go to. So it's also okay to reach out to people. Sometimes people want to tell their stories to us. People want to tell us their stories on how they also became implementers. But we are shy or we are scared as young people to reach out to them. So I believe that it's also okay to reach out to people. But if you reach out to someone and they say no, it's also okay to try again. Just try it till you get whatever you are looking for. And thank you so much, Cheshire, for the great moderation, and thank you to the participants and attendees.
Thank you very much. Indeed, where there is a will, there is a way. Yes, and we will try until we get to what we are looking for. Thank you, viewers, once again for joining us for the September Masterclass. I believe it was as insightful to you as it was to me. And as I mentioned earlier, the recording will be shared for us all to have access to it on our YouTube channel at Anijie Global Foundation. Do all to rewatch. You may think you heard everything, but there may be some few things once you rewatch, you realize you didn't really pick up during the session. So do all to rewatch and share with your network so that they also benefit from this session. Thank you. See you next month, October, for the next masterclass. And as I mentioned, we share the feedback form. Please do all to fill. Please do all to fill. Thank you very much. Catch you next month for our next masterclass. Bye.